Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Privateer Press Developer Hangout for June 13th, 2018.
Woo woo!
I'm Will Hungerford, developer at Privateer Press. That's my boss Stage 1, Schoonover.
Oh, you're pointing at me.
Developer Manager.
He's pointing at you, yeah.
And then Boss Stage 2, or semi-final boss, mini-boss.
Shictator.
Mini boss.
Well, final boss is Wilson.
Sure. No, I got.
But
got what
you're the
laying
boss
down.
you fight in the room right before it's loaded with save points, and then you go on to Wilson.
I got what you're laying
So I'm
down.
like a taco, and he's like a taco supreme.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Can I be a double-decker taco, like one of those ones that has
No.
the tortilla and the tortilla with some kind of like filling in the middle? Mine would be cheese.
No,
You live your dream, man. I can't tell you what to
you
do.
can't be that.
You live your
What,
life.
what are we talking about today?
So what we're talking about today,
It's not
first off,
tacos.
is let's talk about what you're watching and what you can expect to watch every week. So this is one of our live streams. We do 3 of them a week, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific on those days. Tuesday is the weekly Rumble where the staff gets together and we play the games we make. War Machine, Hordes, Company of Iron, soon to be Monster Apocalypse, and all that good stuff. And we
Played
talk
a
with you.
sweet game of Arcanus yesterday.
Played
Yesterday
a
was
sweet game of
Wizards.
Arcanus yesterday, some of the No Quarter Prime games as well. Wednesdays is the Developer Hangout, which is what you're watching now. Typically, the developers get together. We usually talk about CID, but we do have non-CID topics where we talk about all kinds of different things, development going on with the games, and sometimes just random sort of potpourri topics like you'll have today. And then Thursday is Get Your Paint On with Dallas Kemp, where Dallas shows you hobby and painting tips and tricks, and also talks to you if any questions you have about how to achieve certain color schemes or any painting questions you may have. You can watch us live at twitch.tv/privateerpress, or you can catch these later on, which you might be watching now, on YouTube at youtube.com/privateerpressprime.
Yeah, someone in the year 3562 is watching us on YouTube right now.
Dude, people watch stuff
It's
from
real
like
weird.
long time ago.
Yeah.
We are live, as I mentioned. So if you're watching this on YouTube or you're watching replay later, and you see us look slightly off camera, and Oz makes his "I'm reading things" face,
I make lots of faces.
that's because streams up live. We have it on a big
apparently.
monitor in front
I
of us.
just like to point when he explains where it's at.
Yeah, and so sometimes we'll say a username, read their question, and and talk to them. But before we get into things, there's 2 things we want to mention to everybody. One, Lock and Load is next week.
Next week.
We are mostly ready.
We're totally ready.
We're like 99% ready.
I gotta finish that one document.
109%.
We haven't
ready.
set the terrain on the tables yet, but we're basically there.
Yeah.
If you want to come, pplockandload.com, you can check out the event schedule. You can still get tickets. There are some left. I think the hotel block, like the discounted block, is sold out, but there are still hotel rooms. So come join us. Like, talk about Company of Iron with Oz. Talk about anything with Will Schick. You and I can play games. Go paint with Dallas. Is Doug going to be there?
Hamilton?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna be there. I just gave him approval on a bunch of the sculpts that he's gonna be showing off.
He gets in tomorrow.
So
Sweet.
he's
Hamilton will
got-
be there with Sculpts.
He's got quite a list. of
CCAT and
things.
Getz will be there talking
Yes.
lore. We'll have the keynote, which we will be live streaming. So a lot of cool things. Speaking of live streaming real fast, next week we will not be going live aside from at Lock and Load. The normal Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday schedule I just talked to you about will be replays because we will all be at Lock and Load getting ready. And the first live stream should be Friday morning for the keynote. Last thing to mention before we get started, there's 6 days left for the new mini crate model. So June 19th is the last day you have to subscribe to mini crate or order your mini crate model, which is still the succulent Pharaoh Valkyrie. Warlord.
Pharaoh Valkyrie Warlord.
Warlord.
Yeah.
She is-
Pharaoh
yeah, she is a
Brigand War
warlord.
Valkyrie. She replaces the Pharaoh Brigand Warlord.
Yes.
You knew what I was talking about.
That's why
The
she's
Pharaoh Valkyrie mini crate
that's,
model.
That's
Yeah.
why she's my new favorite word, ambidextrous.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
Everyone saw her on the screen
It's
when we were
amazing.
talking about stuff, so they,
They
They know.
what
They
it
know.
is.
They know what's up. They know what's up.
Also, first comment, Neil. I don't know where it went. Schick is back, but he wasn't gone because he was being punished. He was gone because he's not really a
Wait,
developer.
I was gone? I didn't realize
Well,
it was gone.
you're not in this
I'm
stream
not. No,
very
normally-
often because
normally
normally
I'm not brought on.
Pagani's not in Oklahoma.
That's true.
But this week,
He's teaching Pagani math over in Oklahoma right now.
He
Yeah,
is.
it's-
After that last chat, he's been asked to travel around and teach math probability, and it's been very popular. So, what are we talking about today?
we're talking about Lock and Load.
Well, we can talk
Mostly.
about pretty much anything. But Lock and Load was on the docket.
Yep. So we have a potpourri episode for you today,
Yeah.
which means if you have questions, ask. If we can answer, we will. We'll spend a lot more time with the chat, but what we're primarily talking about is the events coming up at Lock
Yeah.
and Load.
I'm gonna throw that out.
Oh,
I'm just gonna.
We're just
we're just gonna do it live. All right, I'm ready.
So So it's a dev talk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I really think that we had Math Ghani and his sweet maths last week, which is a view. We were talking about this before, and I'm just going to railroad this whole thing.
We prepared that
because-
math talk last week.
Yeah.
We did not prepare
No,
whatever
but
this is.
I don't feel like this is as prepared because it's
okay.
not math.
Okay.
This is philosophy and theory. And
Oh.
what I really want to dive into is everybody at this table has had a significant hand in creating at least one or more games that have been released by the company.
Yes.
And since this is a dev talk, and I'm sure there are people out there who are really curious about how the art of game development is approached, I wanted to take control of this entire stream and make everybody talk about kind of their game theory. How do you approach making a game? What do you think makes a good game? What are the things that you like out of the games that you play? And how does that influence the development that you have? Let's get really into it.
Sure, man.
Or-
I'm down.
Or like Sarah
I dig
said,
it.
we could just talk about why you're not wearing a cool T-shirt.
I was going to wear my Thagros shirt, but Oz already wore the Thagros shirt, and we have a one Thagros shirt limit. So,
Yep.
plus this is a cool shirt. Don't get me off track, Sarah. We're talking about philosophy today. We're getting into it. All right, so first things first. How do you define a game?
So, you want to go first, Oz, or me?
It's a very loose, very, very loose definition.
I don't think it is.
It's an activity you do with people that has rules.
That is fun. Should be.
Uh,
That is fun. If you're going to be successful at it, it's fun.
Fun is subjective, though.
It is, and that's the hardest part of being a designer is because you can look at mechanics and you can look at the math and understand like this aspect of a game works. Like this game involves me taking model A and model B and they smash together and I roll some dice and there's a resolution and one person wins or the other. But that's not fun, right? The challenge of making a game is how do you find fun? How do you make another human being have a good time when there are so many different people? And for me, every game designer starts at a different area. Sometimes they start with the mechanics. Sometimes they start with the concept, like the skin. Like this will be a pirate boarding game, or it'll be extreme colossal wrestling and things like that. For me, it is what am I going to bring to the table that is going to be fun? So, for example, extreme colossal wrestling. Before I slapped the wrestling sort of skin on it, what I wanted to do was make a game that would be one model versus one model. Like you were just going to be head to head, but then you had this sort of suite of options for each one that made whichever model you chose feel really unique, and that the fun of the game was figuring out how to use your options in various combos. I definitely was inspired by fighting games, like video game fighting games, like setting up combos and pulling off these combos where you'd be like, punching a dude, then suplexing him, then throwing him. It could have been a karate game. It could have been like I flying kick you and then chop you in the throat. That you were trying to set up these combos and your opponent would try and counter them, and there would be this back and forth play where your decisions would sort of go, stack, then resolve, and sort of cinematically you would see the result of what happened. And one person was trying to beat the other. And to me, that would be fun. It was a simulation of fight.
He said the wrong word.
How about
He
you?
said
Oz?
simulation.
How about
Well,
you?
that's what the idea was.
Sure.
So what you're saying, Hungerford, is that
Well-
the fun is derived from contextualizing the mechanics.
Well, I'm going to finish my thought real fast.
Okay.
So I started first with what would be fun. And the idea to me, a fun idea would be to create an activity that would allow you to simulate a battle between two people that was detailed enough that you were doing their individual moves. It wasn't simply, I attack you, you take damage. It's, I do this specific thing, you do this specific thing. Then it was, let's take the concept, okay, let's make it extreme colossal wrestling, and then create the mechanics that support that. So my personal philosophy is, how am I going to make you have fun? What narrative surrounds that? And then what mechanics support it?
But the question wasn't how do you make a game, it was what is a game?
Yeah.
Oh, I went way deeper.
You
yeah.
did.
Yeah. A game is just a thing that people can agree to do together that has some sort of rules. It should be fun for some group of people,
So for example,
but it doesn't have to be fun for everybody because there are games out there that I don't like and games out there that I love, and they're both games.
when my two boys get together with a group of other boys on a baseball field and they decide that they're going to play Marvel superheroes, and all of a sudden there becomes a loose set of rules on which superhero you can be,
Yeah.
how you can defeat the villain, whatever poor child's ostracized to be
Does
the
it
villain.
involve throwing baseballs at them?
Sometimes, I mean,
on who they are.
there's a loose social contract.
Yeah.
Like for me, that's a game. The second that you have this is what we're gonna do, and these are kind of the scriptures of how we do it, like you're talking about playing a game.
Yeah.
So when we have office sickness bingo, that's literally a game that we can all play.
Yeah.
And we used to. We used to have a bingo board, and you'd pick the person, the why, and the when, and if you scored points. And that was an office game. So I think, yeah, I'm on the Oz side of things, where a game is a very high conceptual concept of, like, if we just got together and we decided that we were going to roll a 12 is a great one.
That game.
Roll a 12 is totally a game.
It is a
You can play it
game.
for hours, and it is
Or
maybe
forever.
The loosest and silliest concept of roll a die. Did you get a 12? If you didn't, add another die.
Well, it's roll a die if you rolled under a 12.
Yep.
Add
Roll
another
a
die.
Roll a single d6.
Well, you
roll a
start with a
You start
D6.
with a single D6.
Hold on, we're
Because
gonna
you
tell
said die.
Yeah.
You could be rolling a d12. I don't
No,
know what
hold
you're
on,
talking
hold
Well,
about.
it could be any, you can use any type of die.
Let's tell the users how to play roll
Sure.
a 12.
Roll a
So
12.
You roll
Yeah.
a die. If it's less than a
A
12,
D6 specifically is what we
D6.
use, but
Yeah.
you could use any die you wanted.
if it's less, the result is less than a 12, you add another die. Then you roll those dice. If the result is less than a 12, you add another die. If it's ever more than a 12, you don't add another die. You keep rolling dice until you roll a 12. I hate this game.
So wait, do you get
this game.
Do you get infinite turns until you
Yes.
hit 12?
Why-
No,
and then
you may have infinite turns because you're like, okay, you roll one die, you can't get over 12, right? So you
Yeah.
immediately get 2 dice. So your second roll, if you roll boxcars, you win. It's the best you can do. But
Sure.
more often than not, you're going to roll under. So now you're rolling
Is this
3
a
dice.
simultaneous game? Or we're
no,
all
you-
playing
you
at
just-
the same
you just-
time?
Typically, you just go one at a time, and
No,
the
it's
person who can
solitaire.
roll 12 in the least amount of with the least amount of dice wins the game. If you're playing with other people.
Okay.
Otherwise, your goal is just to roll the best you can before you hit 13 dice, because at that point you lose.
What, the nightmare is that you roll 11 dice and it comes up all ones.
Well,
And
yeah.
then you've got 12 dice. At which point,
Yeah.
the only thing you can do is either roll all ones on 12 dice or roll forever.
Yeah,
And there are people out there today still rolling
I mean,
dice.
that sounds like a game.
it is a game.
That sounds
So-
like a game we made up on one of the
So,
trips to
so
or
now that
from
we've
the Genton
established that
Airport.
a game can pretty much be anything within a loose stricture of rules, right? We have our top tier. We all agree
Well, yeah.
this is a game. How do you take that concept and distill it into what most people think is a game, where it comes in a box, it has rules, it has this stuff? Like, there's a wide gamut of stuff out there that people consider a true game, right? Roll a 12 is a game, but not really a game. Playing Marvel superheroes on a baseball field is a game, but not really what we're talking about in a game.
Yeah.
So at what point do you define, like, what are the components you feel define what a game actually is? Like, is it just a deck of cards? Is it a rule book? Does it take dice?
I'm going to take this one real fast, Oz, and then...
You talk
take-
first. It's
quick
Oz's
though,
turn.
it's whatever the game needs to be the game. Because roll a 12
Needs a rule book.
needs needs 11 dice, excuse me, and it needs something that explains the rules of the game, and that's probably just like
It needs 12 dice.
a business card.
But I guess the question
Well,
is,
but you don't need the 12th die.
do you consider roll a 12
Don't
to
you
be a
lose?
tabletop game?
No,
at
you
that
need the
point?
13th die to lose.
Yeah, you lose on 13 because there's
'Cause you could
zero
roll
way
12
to actually
ones.
roll 12. Because you can roll 12 ones.
Well, you can
and
never
win
get.
roll
You
12.
cannot get to 13 dice.
Correct.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
If you have 12 dice, you either roll forever or you roll 12 ones. My answer, when it becomes a game, is still my theory of how are we going to make the fun, what is the wrapping of the fun, the mechanics of the fun. When does it become a game in the sense of what we do for a living? To me, is stages 2 and 3 gelling. Like, I can have ideas of how to make people have fun all day, but that doesn't make anything happen. But once I have an actual idea and a concept that I think is attractive, like Deck Raiders or Extreme Colossal Wrestling, and then mechanics that support it, and then they actually work to do this. Because sometimes you'll have an idea of something that you think would be a ton of fun, but you just can't make rules for it, or you don't have the right components for it, or you can't do it. It's when that magic formula clicks, and you're like, okay, I can build the mechanics to support the narrative, to support the concept, and I can create these components and they work together, that it begins to form into a game. But there's no, like, to me, there's no magic step. It's very organic. And eventually at some point you say, I have the product.
All right, Oz.
It's this is one of my favorite topics in the entire
Nope,
world. and I
Sarah,
was just talking
Sarah
about
just
this.
nailed it. She beat all of you.
Oh?
Game, a defined set of rules, a win condition, a start and end point.
Don't-
Boom, nailed it.
Don't look on the internet for definitions.
It is
So-
literally my job to look on the internet.
Yeah, I was just having conversations about this with some people at a local event for game designers recently. it's really important to also separate when you're designing a game and when you're developing a game.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because designing a game can be, I did the math, I have a grid, I have these tiles, the math works. But you're not really making the game real until you play test it,
Sure.
and that's when the development stage happens. Because you can have a million theories about all the parts. They're perfect. Like, I need these 12 cards, I need these 185 dice. You know, I need all these things. And then you sit down to play test it. Even if you're playing it by yourself, unless it's a solitaire game, you're not going to get a real playtest experience by yourself. So the development process starts basically as soon as you have the core concepts and the components to make the game a functional-ish thing, and then you start playtesting it, and then you probably find out, like Hungerford said, what works, what doesn't work, and which direction you're going to go and what like rabbit holes to go down.
Sure.
Because one of the problems of early game design is trying to add things to make things happen, and then realizing in development, playtest especially, that people don't care about that thing you added. And you're like, well, but that's really integral to this whole entire concept I have, and nobody's using it, nobody cares, because people will tell you what your game is, regardless of what you think it is.
And
I
a
also
quick
like to-
question regarding Lock and Load from Dorian. Will the PP staff be at the hotel on Thursday? We will. We'll be super, super busy with setup, but we might have a minute to say hi.
So to me, I've always, and this is again very conceptual, I like to think of design as you're painting, and development as taking a chainsaw to that painting. Like, you're creating the,
Painting
Okay.
with chainsaws.
yeah,
Sure.
it's painting with
This is
chainsaws,
a Dallas
right?
thing.
Like you create this image, and you're like, ah, look at the beautiful field I made, and then the developer, we come in with the chainsaws and be like, well, that's never going to fit in the box we want it to be in. You
Sure.
made your frame portrait this big, so which parts of this painting can we keep and it still be a painting of a field while it fits in the box we need it to fit into? So
Yeah.
I'm going to saw off this edge, then I'm going to saw off this edge. Oh, and this flower down here, it's stupid.
It's not all about deconstruction, though. Sometimes
It's not.
about
Well, sometimes you're like, oh,
reconstruction.
hold on, I can fix this flower for you.
The closest thing it has to the way a lot of people might experience things is writing and editing. Because a lot of people just dump their ideas into the page when they're writing, and they're like, and then the dragon shows up. And then the editor's like, where'd this dragon come from? And you're like, the dragon showed up, but you didn't establish the world had dragons in it.
Sure.
You were like, it was a story about baseball.
It was like
And then all of a
1920s
sudden,
noir, like
and then all of a
mystery.
sudden there's a dragon. What's going on? And so an editor will fix all your little typos and be like, well, this sentence structure and this paragraph should be here. But it will also do things like, well, this part of your story isn't really doing anything. It isn't helping the story. It's unnecessary. Why don't you change the dragon to, I don't know,
Hold
a
on.
school bus?
We haven't asked Schick anything. I have one for you.
Yeah.
Does a game have to have a win condition?
No.
Nope.
It does not.
Because the definition that Sarah Chu gave earlier,
true.
that John retorted, was that a game's definition is it has a win condition.
I do not believe that games have to have a win condition. I believe they have to have an end. And that end can be almost infinite in time. But at some point, for example, let's use playground play, right? The end condition is the bell rings and we go back into school. Maybe we pick it up again, maybe we don't. But the fact is that there's a defined point at which the game could end. Like, if I'm playing superheroes, the game ends when we beat the villain,
Okay.
right? Or if I'm playing roll a 12, the game ends when I just choose I'm tired of rolling dice and I want to go do something
Or you
else.
roll a 12.
Or I roll a 12.
That one has a win condition.
But
Yeah.
I could continue to move forward. The thing, it has one, it also has the potential to never have one, right?
Yes.
So for me, I think, my definition of a game is, like, again, a lot like Oz's, and where you can say these are the things that make a game, but I think what those things are in terms of like a higher level could be anything, right? I can make a game out of flipping a pencil in my fingers until I can like roll it all the way around, and then I can start to do tricks with it. I mean, that to me is a game. It's a solitary game, but it's a game nonetheless, because I can start assigning points to it. I can do all this stuff. I think when you start to really drill down though, and you start talking about like what we're engaged in tabletop gaming, what we do here, what the people watching the stream likely came to discuss and enjoy, right? At that point, the strictures start to close in, because you're talking about, it's not just about me, it's about a wider group.
How do you make other people have fun?
And that's where the business side of it, the kind of the idea of I'm going to make this thing, and it's not just going to be for me. It's not just going to be for my gaming group. I want it to appeal to a wide audience. I want to find a segment of people who want this experience, who are going to enjoy this experience, how do you start to maximize that? And I think that's where the chainsaw analogy comes in, and also where Oz's development comes in. It's like, this is going to be amazing, and you made the best game ever. It like hits every button you want. You think it's amazing and awesome. And I see this every day in this building when we play test and when we talk. We have development talks internally about games and what people want out of it. And you get to that point where it's like, well, I understand that you really love this idea, Hungerford, but it's terrible and nobody will like it.
That's never been said to me ever.
And here's why.
it might have been.
Never, ever.
So,
but it comes down to, you know, in some ways you're having to depersonalize the experience and the development to make something that is greater. And by doing that, you actually make a better game, because games are more fun when more people are involved typically.
Well, and one of the strongest things about design and development is it's very, very difficult to develop your own design, because you will probably really like elements of it.
You're biased.
That that are not good and are not necessary. But you're like, but I that was when I solved that one problem, and I'm sure it took a whole roll of duct tape, but I love it and I can't take it out. It's much easier, because I've done this before, to develop other people's designs, because then you're like, this part's stupid. Why'd you do this? And they're like, I was trying to. Well, you didn't do that, so I'm going to fix it.
I don't know what the name for it is, but you basically get like genius syndrome, where you're like, well, this is an absolute stroke of genius. This is one of the best game designs ever. Someone's like, nah, brah, that's dumb.
That's called hubris.
Kind of. It's that you've entered this thing in the world, and you spend so much time working on it that if it works just enough and a couple people have fun with it, you can get overly attached to it, right?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, you're right. Coming in on someone else's project. And that's why we have a whole dev team. It's not just one person doing anything, because if it was, I think you lose a lot of spice and variety when you do so.
Yeah.
So let's go down the rabbit hole a little further.
I'm ready.
Random chance versus predetermined outcome.
So I wrote an insider about this 6 years ago, something like that. The three legs of the stool of a game design are chance, skill, and social interaction. And you can have almost none of one of those and still have a stable thing that will still function. But if you have too much of it, that's where you get your subjectiveness of, I really like this game because it lets me roll 1,000 dice. And someone's like, well, but you don't make any good decisions and you don't interact with anybody else. They're like, yeah, but I rolled 1,000 dice. And so that's only going to appeal to that one tiny demographic. Where if you start putting player choices in there to benefit skill, and you start putting interaction in there, so that it's a game that is involving other people, then it becomes a more fleshed out, real thing. And I think that's another important part of what we kind of skipped over. A lot of times a game needs to be exactly what a game is for the purpose of that game. Like, you can't make a filler game that is, we're gonna play an RPG later, and we're waiting on 2 more people. So we're gonna play this little card game, you know? But the card game involves setting out a whole bunch of cards and then them being in specific spots. And then when we clean it up, we have to put certain cards back into certain boxes and do these complicated things, because that's not a filler game anymore. That's a complicated game. If we have a deck of cards and there's 10 of them, and you have a couple and I have a couple, and then one of us wins, and we can just throw all that right back in the little box and put it on the shelf when our 2 friends show up to play the RPG with us, then that's a much better filler game, because it's hitting what a filler game needs to be.
Counterpoint?
No.
Whereas, if
there's not really one. I agree with you, but I think that there are the three levels. I think there might be more levels than just those 3, but those, the 3 main levels of a game, which is how random is it, how much skill is involved, and how much social interaction is. Because some people want low skill games, very low skill games. I mean, a lot of like very family friendly games are. It's almost all social interaction and random chance with minor decisions, right? And I think it's important that any product you make, you understand the target you're making it for, and that you crank those levers where it needs to be. I mean, War Machine is probably mid-level random chance, high skill, high social interaction, right?
Yeah, because the skill can also mitigate the random chance.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. I think that lowers the random chance, because of the choices you make that mitigate it. It's still a dice game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You could roll nothing but ones, whereas chess.
Sure, chess is the poster child for the game that's about skill.
Right, it's skill, and it's not even really social interaction.
You're barely interacting with your opponent because they're making choices that are impacting your choices. So there is some social interaction, but there's no chance of any kind. But you notice that the market is not full of 1,000 other games like chess, because chess scratches that itch, does its job, and no one's like, I've created the newest chess, it'll make $1 million, because no one really wants there to be a different thing that does all the things chess does.
All right, so here's a good exercise. Using the 3 pillars of skill, chance, and social interaction.
Yep.
What do you think is the perfect ratio of that based on the game you love most? You don't have to say the game's name.
Well,
but
for me
divide it
or
out.
as a product.
And I think the chat can input too. Like, I'd love to see what people out there
For you.
feel like
Right.
the 3 different pillars is. Like,
For me-
70% chance, 20% skill.
For me or as a product? 'Cause
For
the-
you.
For me
you.
personally, okay.
Like, what are the games that you gravitate toward? Like, where do you think those pillars are right? Because at the end of the day, like, game design is a creative endeavor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
An artist doesn't typically paint a picture they don't like.
But
Unless
I did,
someone's
no, no,
paying
somebody's
them
paying
to
them to
paint
do it.
that
I
picture.
disagree 100%. I can make a game I hate.
I didn't say you
Sure.
can't do it. I said
Sure, but you're not going.
if you're going to make a game, if you're going to make the game for you, right?
Yeah.
You're going to paint the picture for you. The artist is going to paint something he doesn't want to paint.
Okay, I
Yeah.
run
It's a-
Hunger Co. and I can make anything I want.
It's the difference between doing something for the sheer joy of it and
Yeah.
doing something someone's paying you to do.
Sure.
If someone comes to you and you're an artist for hire and they say, paint me a picture of a horse, you're going to paint a picture of a horse. But if you just wake up one Saturday morning and you're like, I'm going to paint something today, then you're going to paint whatever you want because you're going to paint what you want.
So my personal answer.
Or you're going to challenge yourself or whatever.
The reason I got into this industry is so like anybody. I went to college, got my degree in like computer programming, and was going to go make video games. And I messed around with stuff like that for a little bit, and then realized that tabletop was my passion because of social interaction. It's very important to me that I'm sitting at a table with other people and that we are playing a game where we are talking and we're interacting with each other. I'm not a big fan of the type of games where I'm playing, you're playing, and we're all interacting with individual aspects and there's no real crossover. And then eventually one of us ends up winning.
Sure.
So for me, I enjoy games that have high random chance and medium skill, and obviously I like games that have high skill and lower medium chance, which is more on the War Machine side of things. But for me personally, the most important aspect of a game is what I'm doing affects the other people around the table and allows us to interact with each other in meaningful ways, even if it's somebody putting down a card or moving a model and everybody being like, oh snap, like those moments when the table does the arms up and everyone's like, oh God, that's what makes a game to me like important. And that's why I'm in this industry, because doing that I think is very important for people in general.
All right, Oz. Pillars.
I have the same answer for different reasons. I really like social interaction games, games that are like 60% the interaction between the players, because I like to lie to people.
well,
Bluffing.
that's true.
Bluffing games, games with secret traders, those kind of games are my favorite kind of game.
So what were Hungerford's numbers, his percentages?
Oh, I'm not giving numbers.
You have to give your numbers.
I don't have to give numbers.
No, you do. I just told you do. As
You
your
can-
mini
you can-
boss.
you can-
Ah, do you mini boss
I
me?
just mini boss you.
You can ballpark it.
My if I had to say I'm making the perfect game for me, and my numbers would be,
Start with chance.
this is just like what am I putting the most weight on?
I mean, I'm not going to hold you to this
No.
in a day.
What
Just
are the numbers? Like this is how much weight I put on it?
100%
Yeah.
out of 100% to make a game.
Yeah.
What are the percentages between those 3 pillars?
It would be in a perfect world, 50% social interaction, 40% skill, 10% chance.
Interesting. All right, Oz. So 60% social interaction.
So
'Cause you like to lie.
Probably 60% social interaction, but a little bit of that social interaction part is skill, because not being able to lie
Sure.
is
I've
lying is a skill.
Played social games like Werewolf or Two
Yeah.
Rooms and a Boom with people who cannot lie,
Yeah.
and they're terrible at those games.
I don't like playing with people who don't understand lying
Hmm.
because it's not fun. I played a game recently that it was a head-to-head game with a bluffing mechanic, and I did a thing to the player I was playing against, and they didn't know what I was doing, and it was not a strong bluff, and I accomplished what I wanted.
Did you wink afterwards? Is it a strong one?
No,
Okay.
it was just we
like-
hadn't established a lot. Like there were secret cards and stuff, and we hadn't really established what was possible. So I tried something that was a little bit of a bluff, and it worked. The second time I got a chance to take a turn, I did the exact same thing,
And it worked again.
and it worked again. And the player was surprised the second time that I did the same thing. And anytime you're like, I have lied to you 7 times in a row, the exact same way, and you have been surprised 7 times,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not playing with someone who's skilled at social interaction, so it's less
Okay.
fun.
Okay.
Because I don't want to be like, look at me, I'm the king of the world. All you people, I'm defeating you by
Sure.
just telling you that I'm winning.
So-
So it's probably 50% social interaction and then some skill, and then I like a lot of
How
random.
much skill though?
Yeah, give numbers.
10%, 15%, 20%?
Probably 20%.
20%?
So 30%
So
random.
30% random.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now I want to do
Because I like
Oh, I haven't given
wacky.
my numbers yet.
I like
Oh,
wacky stuff to happen. Like when you're like, oh, something. I like that to be the game.
Sure.
The game
Sure.
does that.
So you like the chance to basically inject random flavor.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things about Level 7 Escape, the first game, is that it's very random.
Yes.
In that which enemies appear and how they act and all these things.
Oh, and the
But
tiles.
sometimes it feels like they're
The
doing
tiles,
things on
absolutely.
purpose to you.
Yes, you can feel very persecuted from a random
You're
AI
like, why is
mechanic.
that alien chasing me all the way across the board and ignoring all of you guys?
Because RNGesus hates you.
Because sometimes the RNG isn't so random.
So what's your numbers?
So I
have
think
an
for
idea
me,
of this.
it's 40% social interaction.
Okay.
I would say it's 30% skill and 30% luck.
Ooh, so balanced.
Like
So balanced.
easy.
this is
Even.
no, but this is the thing, right? So
Now,
I like-
contextualizing it is what makes all the
and I agree
difference.
with you. I think one of the great things about Escape, or the great thing about Zombies Keep Out, because it's another game that we do that I super love, and
Yeah.
I have had so much success with that game with my family. There's,
Yeah.
I can't bring out Escape beyond my immediate family. Like my kids will play it, my wife
Yeah.
will play it,
Yeah, yeah.
but if I try to get my mom to play it, she's kind of like, this isn't me, right? We've gone too far.
Yeah.
But I've had my mother-in-law come back to the house and be like, we should play that weird zombie game again that we
Mm-hmm.
played because that was a lot of fun.
And you were like, that never happened to me, Ma.
And I was like, this is fantastic. So it's been one of those, and I think the reason is because you can play that game with skill. There's a lot of social interaction in terms of like discussing where should we go next, what should we
Oh,
do.
and
Trading
especially as you
Nobody
start
gets
to
to
get bitten.
nobody gets to drive the boat though, and that's the thing I think that makes
Yeah.
the big
Yeah.
difference is
Yeah.
the games where I've had the most miserable times with
Bus
are the
driver
ones
syndrome?
where it's just like there's a way to solve this. One person figures it out, and they just tell people how to
Yeah.
move their
They're-
dials and pull their levers.
They're playing
right?
solitaire with other people.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
not fun. And a lot of the times, and especially the problem I have with that is that those games are always appeal to people who aren't very good like they don't have a lot of experience with games, right? So people will market those types of experiences, those full co-op modes, to people and be like, this is a great way to get people into a game. And I'm like, it is on one hand because that person can lean on their friends, but it's also a terrible experience because that person's like, what did I do? I was just a flesh cog in this machine. Like I just
Please don't
I
use
pushed
the
some
term
things.
Flesh hog in the machine.
And it
Hashtag
worked.
Fleshcog.
So
People were bringing up convergence earlier. We finally got
so
there.
yeah, so for me, I think that social interaction is super important. Like, why do we play games? We play games, in my opinion, to sit down with other people and to interact.
Yeah.
yeah.
But having skill and randomness be balanced to me means that when the randomness comes and that crazy event occurs, which I love it when you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
what happened?
The
Oh,
words.
did it?
Chick words.
Yes. Oh, shick word. What just happened? But my problem is that if I can't then respond to that randomness with an appropriate amount of skill
Yeah.
to affect the outcome based on the unknown outcome, to me that's not as much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where Invasion is super fun too. In that, and I'll be honest, like Invasion is probably my favorite level 7 game because, and this might have something to do with like my position in terms of being a business director and dealing with logistics and planning and trying to foresee
Yeah.
outcomes. But for Invasion, it's like you have no control over what's going to happen. You only have control over your resources, and you might be able to influence other people to work towards your plan.
Yeah.
And you might not. But how you manage that based on the randomness with your skill of what you have to do, to me, that's an amazing experience. Like that's an awesome
so
game.
basically,
It's-
the short version is you like chance that can be mitigated by skill.
I like games that throw random things at you, and you can mitigate what happened through your skill. Absolutely.
I think with both of us all of us having high social interaction numbers, it basically comes down to if you're more of a skill, if you want that skill percentage to be higher, you're more likely to be the kind of person who says, good play, right? Like, oh, that was really smart. And if you like the random interaction to be higher, you're more the kind of person who's going to throw their hands up and be like, oh, like you like that kind of moment more. And both of those
Yeah.
are equally rewarding, like, oh, that was really smart, or good job, or good game, things like that. But
So, I want to address one comment out there.
All right,
Rex,
and then we'll let Hunger for
for
Talk
the
'cause he's
win,
dying.
says that I like social interaction games because those are better when drinking.
yeah,
I don't drink,
I do.
and
Heavily.
when other people are really drunk, it's really easy to beat them at games when you're sober.
I'm
So
better.
I don't like that as much.
Dude, my game...
A little bit of alcohol, completely fine.
Privateer Press would like to remind everyone to drink responsibly
Yes.
and obey your state's liquor laws.
When you're an adult and you're drinking a little bit of alcohol and loosens you up, and especially if you're an uptight person and you can't have fun without alcohol, whatever. But when people get a little too far beyond that, which, if they've been playing games all night and they've been drinking all night, then you can't really play that highest skill games with them as a sober person because you're just going to beat them.
Give me a fifth of SoCo, I'll race you. I don't even care. So, with what the percentage we were talking about?
Speaking of ill-advised
Also,
drinking.
Sarah Chu, I appreciate the Mike Shinoda shout out with the percentages.
Yeah.
Classic.
Let's apply this to two of our most popular games, in your opinions. What is the breakdown for War Machine, and what is the breakdown for the IK RPG? So War Machine, how much of it
I
is
almost
social
want to give you
interaction?
guys pieces of paper to write on secretly because
Secretly,
I bet
and
you'd
just
come
be
up
like-
with different numbers.
So
we can do this.
RPGs
Just hide your hands under.
RPGs
look,
are different,
So
though.
no.
Hide your hands under.
Hide your hands under.
What are we-
So skill. So 1 through 10.
Of War Machine?
10 being 100. Yeah.
Yeah.
How much is War Machine skill?
All right,
then-
so
ready?
show them in 3, 2, 1.
6.
8.
6 and 8.
Okay. All right. So 60%
Okay.
skill. How much
Okay.
of it is social?
Well, he feels it's 80% of skill.
I'm-
It's
I'm
a high
great.
skill game.
Okay, what
80%.
is the social interaction?
All right. Social interaction.
In 3, 2, 1.
What'd you put up? 1, 2, 3.
I put up an 8 for the first one. I can't
Okay,
put
and then
up
we
a
know what
2.
our remaining one
Yeah.
is.
And
so-
obviously, 20% for me is luck
Or chance.
or chance.
10%
Yeah,
for me.
10% for you, and then
1%.
10%.
yeah, 1%
I
for
mean,
you.
yeah,
You-
10%.
you had
The 1 out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
you guys all think that chance is between 10 and 20%.
Yeah.
I think it's exceptionally low because of the skill element. Like there are so many ways to mitigate chance within War Machine and Hordes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
That-
like even between there's so many levers to pull between unit choice, army building, theme force choice,
Even on the game
Warcast,
itself.
even on
like,
the game itself by
the number of-
positioning. Yeah.
And you see, and I think you see that skill play out, right? The models that are typically preferred are the ones that have higher chances or ways to mitigate your odds. Rerolls being huge.
Or mess with
Mathgani
your-
would
or
be
mess with your
proud.
opponent's odds.
Talk about,
Math,
talk
yeah.
about Mathgani and his rerolls, right? I think, I think that also that raises interesting the social interaction portion of it, right?
Yeah.
And this becomes unique in that the War Machine Hordes community has an amazing amount of social interaction. We're doing these streams. We're doing everything else. We might not be online anymore. It's hard to say. Are we
This
good? We're
this
good?
computer's down. I'm not getting the indication over here.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Are we still on,
So
chat?
we're-
Tell us, chat.
we're
Are we
on-
still
They,
on?
they can't tell you on this chat.
That-
so I'm gonna have to pull it up on my
The
phone.
the chat computer is off the
The
internet.
chat computer is completely
But
dead.
the other one is
Oh,
not.
we're
I was
having technical
wondering.
difficulties right
I was
now?
wondering
I
why
like
we
this.
hadn't
Hold on.
no chat had.
I'm gonna
moved,
take my phone
so
out.
I'm already doing it.
I'm gonna go to
Oh,
Twitch.
we got the phone.
I am
right.
not going to pull out my phone. It's not a good phone.
I didn't bring my phone. 'cause we're not supposed to bring
I didn't
phones.
silence my phone though.
You didn't? Or
This is
you
gonna be
did?
super
forgot
awesome if
to.
we're still live, though.
I
Cool.
mean, what can we do, right?
I think that.
Well, we don't know if we're still live.
I think it's
I
also.
don't waste your good brain power.
Assume you are.
We're totally live
All
right
all
now.
perfect.
I think
Yes!
I think it's
Sweet.
also weirdly complicated if you are what level of War Machine player you are.
Sure.
And I don't mean like I am double S skill. I mean if you're playing
Double
War
S
Machine casually, buying models you like the look of, painting them. One of the comments I see a lot on the internet is people are like, "Well, I take 3 units of this and I win all my games." A lot of players at the casual level, they're like, "I bought one set of this. I might have even back in the old days, might have only bought a minimum unit of these
Sure.
guys because I want them to have a complete army of all the options, but I don't really want to deep dive into this one unit. Like I only have 6 painted Forge Guard because I don't like Forge Guard as much as I like High Shields. And so people are like, "Well, you just take all these Forge Guard," and I'm like, I only have 6. And,
Sure.
like I can't build that army you're talking about. But if you're at the much more serious level, then you are going to mitigate a bunch of
Sure.
chance with skill. But if you're playing at the casual level, you're probably not making the value decisions of mitigating all of it at army building. And you're probably playing a warcast you like and units you like, and maybe they don't synergize perfectly
Sure.
and all those kind of things. So the game can be a lot more random, just depending on how you come at it and what you personally value the experience to be. Because gaming at the bottom line is all about the experience the game is giving you and the experience you want out of it.
Again, it comes back to you have a social contract.
Yeah.
Real fast, the
what am I trying to do
reason I have my phone, everybody, we're having technical difficulties as you cut earlier. Our chat is acting
Is it
up,
back?
so as we're getting it fixed,
It's back!
It's back!
It's good. I have my phone out. But there's a question we missed while you were talking. Oz, it's been confirmed by chat that you are a fluff bunny.
Oh, nice.
No.
Not
at all.
We'll get you some rabbit ears and a
Not at all.
little poofy tail.
So there's a lot of derogatory terms in the miniatures community. Fluff bunny is probably one of them. It's kind of used half and half, and that means a person who cares almost entirely about the setting. And I'm in the middle of all of the all the dials. Like, I care about the setting. I like reading stories. I don't keep up on every single story. Back when I played War Machine before I worked here, I didn't always buy the new anthology book.
I mean,
when
I've
it
seen
came
your
out.
armies, and they're clearly not like wholly devoted to narrative. You've done things that would not happen in the world.
But when I play very casually, and I like to see what happens instead of like determining what's going to happen.
Well, it comes back to your love of
ahead
chance,
time.
right? I think,
Yeah.
and I think here comes another thing. If you start to compare the War Machine numbers to the game that we like, and the fact that War Machine is mutable, like you're talking about, you're going to just gravitate towards the experience that you like.
Yeah. That's the greatest thing about miniatures games to a certain extent, is if you can find other players that want the same experience as you want, then you can have the experience you want. If you go to tournaments, you will meet a lot of people who are very competitive minded, high level, like all the skill they can put in the game.
Yeah, you're in a tournament.
Because those people want to win.
Sure.
And you can also go to other events that are like some of the launch events we've done for books in the past.
Go to a league, go to Summer Rampage, things like that.
And Longest Night and those kind of things. And those people are like, well, we're going to play a weird scenario with zombies constantly spewing all over the table. And so it's going to be more random. And I want to see what would happen if my guys came into this thing where there's a zombie party happening.
One of my
and there's a
favorite
tent
things that
spewing
happens
zombies.
locally at one of the local game stores, and we have a pretty competitive meta here in the Seattle area. But you'll go to one of the local game stores where they have 64-man Masters tournaments and stuff like that, and you'll go on like a Monday, and there's just one group of guys that play. There's like 6 of them. They've never played in a tournament. They don't care whatsoever.
Yeah.
They only play multiplayer games with each other. All 6 of them on the table at the same time, and they play for just like 5 hours at a time. And that's wonderful, right? It's to see just a different way the game is played. And like, they play War Machine, CID, the stuff we do for so much. Doesn't matter to them. Like, it's irrelevant. They're playing with what things as it is right now and just enjoying it. And so, like you said, we may have our percentages for what we think War Machine is in general, and they have changed their interaction with it to be a different way, so it's more what they want it to be. Which is a great thing about games. It comes down to house rules and homebrewing, right? You can take any game and make it sort of your own.
To an extent, I think Oz kind of hit on something though with miniatures games specifically, and I think this is why you don't see very often. Very rarely does a board game come out and it creates a community, a robust global community that gravitates around the game, that have large-scale discussions about it. It's a very rare thing, and even then, the community is kind of different. It's, I like this, here's some cool things we did with the game, or here's how I painted these models. With miniatures games, because they're so flexible, because they're so mutable in terms of they're giving you this strong set of here's what the game is, but there's so much room, there's so much sandbox to play in, as opposed to, say, like a Monopoly, for instance.
Sure.
That you can get these really wide communities. And that kind of comes back to the point I was talking about before I had our technical difficulties, is that despite the fact that yours and my numbers on community or interaction or social interactions at the table was low, I think the social interaction is actually really high when it comes to a miniatures game, especially War Machine and Hordes, away from the table. And I think that's one of the really rare things about the game in general, and one of the things that is interesting to work on, because we talk about those 3 pillars in the game, but at the same time, when we're developing War Machine and Hordes, we're not just thinking about social interaction at the table itself, we're thinking about social interaction beyond the table as well.
Well, see, that's where I think
afterwards with
that's where I think the 4th column or leg comes in, and it's an optional column, right, for most experiences, which is the consistency across play. Right? So because that consistency is wholly defined by the levers people choose to pull, it's completely mutable in a game like War Machine.
What's interesting is you mentioned how War Machine miniatures game has that mutability, and I think what's interesting to me about miniatures games is they're partway between board game and RPG. Because RPGs, you want to talk about communities doing their own thing.
Right.
RPGs are this end of it, right? They literally, the rules of the game say,
Yeah.
here's a world you can play in, or make your own world. And there's entire subreddits and all these forums and pages dedicated to like map building and world building. And miniatures are right in the middle of all of that, right? And I think that's why they have such
Well, that's where
appeal.
miniatures came from to
Yeah.
a certain extent.
True.
Was historical people wanting to recreate Waterloo.
Yeah.
And then RPG players that wanted a different experience. They wanted to have basically combat and have less RPG rules, but still have some of that
It all
interaction.
started with the original Little Wars, right?
Yeah.
And then
Well,
grew
yeah.
from there.
Yeah.
Like that was the first concept of it that we
Yeah.
really know about.
And that's what a lot of like my experience, the reason I'm a miniatures gamer, is I found a whole bunch of plastic army men at a local store when I was a little kid, and they were in colors. Like they're almost all World War II. The Germans were gray, the Americans were green. The British and the Japanese were tan, so they were one
Well,
army.
because the British, I mean, technically, the Japanese being tan, you know, the Pacific theater makes sense. But the British, probably the Rommel, African core kind of thing, they're in tan.
And we would set up.
Plus, they're known for those hats.
We would set up crazy, gigantic backyard fights, and then just basically have arguments about what was possible.
Man, it's funny you say that because like literally my first miniatures game experience, the first true miniatures game I ever played was homebrew. And it was my dad and I, and we'd take the army and we'd set them up on a table, and you'd flick erasers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you hit an army man, he was hit and he was dead, and you'd have different eraser sizes for the different weapons that you had. So like the tanks would shoot big erasers, you know, like the chunky ones, and the normal troopers would shoot like the little pencil erasers you'd pull out. It was awesome.
That was the first game you ever played?
defaced a
No,
lot
that was
of
the first
pencil
miniatures game.
Oh,
I
first
consider that the
miniature-
very first miniatures game experience I ever had because we had rules, we had a social contract, we knew who won, like
Gotcha.
you knocked down all the guys. That was the very first miniatures game I ever played. And for me, you know, it totally works. And to this day, I still like think like that was super fun. It was a dexterity-based miniatures game.
Yeah.
We are leaving out a very important game that one of our viewers coming to Lock and Load can totally win. And that game is the first person to bring me a Schick Muppet.
I mean, it's sort of it's just a requirement.
That's
for
more
life,
of a more of
really.
a contest than a game.
Yeah. So, anything else we want to add on our? We've been going for like almost an hour now. We're getting towards the
Yeah.
end of our stream. Is there anything else you want to bring up, Schick? Because we had a topic today. Which
We
let's
did.
talk about
We did.
events at Lock
Here-
and Load.
So here, I can tie it all back together. If you want to continue the conversation and you're going to be at Lock and Load, we're going to be there. We're going to have hangouts where we talk about this stuff. We're going to talk about games specifically. You can ask about game theory there. We're going to have hangouts where we just talk about the overall creative process in general.
We'll play games with you.
Many times we wind up at an eatery and a bar, which happens to be in the restaurant this time.
Constantly
and
at a bar.
There's no stopping us once
Constantly.
once we start
I
to
don't
have
think
some
that's
social
quite accurate.
lubrication. So like all of this stuff, right? I think not only is it important to do, and I think it's a good subject for a dev talk and one
I
that I
agree.
was happy to dive into. But it's also kind of a preview. Like if you want this interaction,
Yeah.
like Lock and Load, War Machine Weekend, anytime you catch us, you know, everyone here would absolutely talk your ear off about it. And it's a fascinating concept, and I think it's one that touches every tabletop player, regardless of how interested you are. Like you may never want to make your own game.
But it's good to know what
But-
you want.
Everyone loves understanding what the philosophy of game is. Why do you like things? And sometimes even knowing what the pillars are, like once you hear the concept of the pillars and you can define that, it all of a sudden makes the games that you play way better because you can understand which ones you're going to like.
That's what I
Yeah.
meant when I said it helps you know what you want, because the more you understand exactly the mechanics of a game and the philosophy of it, then you can look at a new product coming out and being like, now that scratches the exact itch I want, versus just sort of blind buying all this stuff. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of games out there today, right?
Yeah.
And the more you understand, the more selective you can be, and you can get better games.
Well, and you also can understand that sometimes your mood is going to change those percentages
Absolutely.
for you.
The
Right?
games.
Well, I think
And the group you're playing.
I think what Schick was saying about his mother-in-law and Zombies Keep Out is a big important thing. Like I like lots of different kinds of games, and in some places I've lived, I've had gaming groups for all those kinds of games, and in some places I've lived, I haven't had gaming groups for all those kinds of games.
Right.
So sometimes you might love a kind of game and not have anyone to play it with because none of your friends like that kind of game.
And to flip that too, right? Like knowing the pillars and understanding like the idea behind different games for different people. What it also attributes to is like if you want to make that gaming group that doesn't exist, you can use that to figure out, okay, I'm looking at this person, what are they going to like? I know what games will land with my kids. I know which games will land with my wife. And by doing that, I've been able to introduce them to a wider world, right? I will sit through the dog poop game where all you do is squeeze a handle after spinning a random number and it farts until it poops out a little like turd, and the goal of the game is to get 3 turds before anyone else does.
I want
This
this
is-
to be
no,
I want this
this
to
is
be
literally a
completely
game.
imaginary.
No,
He's
no,
just
no.
I hope
stream
you-
of
You
consciousness.
can find this game at any fine department store.
I don't believe you. I'm gonna go to your house and ask you to show me the dog poop game. You're just gonna black out.
I'm gonna-
wake up and be like, "Did you have fun?"
I'm gonna bring this game tomorrow, and you're all gonna play it at lunch. We're gonna
Hell
play the
no,
dog
I'm
poop
not.
game at lunch.
Hell no, that's a dude. I've
If
played.
you bring dog poop
I've fallen
to
for that
work
trick once.
tomorrow.
So the point being that once you understand the pillars,
You play with
can-
dog poop?
You can use that to introduce people into gaming, and then to grow or either to maintain that.
Man, we were doing so well. You brought a great topic, and we had some really good philosophical discussion, and brought up some great points, and then we just slapped some dog poop on the end.
No. It's go look it up. Go
I-
look it up. It's there. It's a real game.
Okay,
It's a
so
real game.
before we head out, because lock and load.
Twitch chat says PP dog poop game confirmed incoming.
No.
That's a keynote, a preview for everybody right there.
Nope. So for everyone there, starting with Hungerford, what is your favorite game-related discussion or moment you've had at Lock and Load so far?
I have had a ton. My favorite, that's really hard to pick because there's been so many good hangouts and so many times, like anyone who sees me at Lock and Load knows that I'm there for my shift and then I usually stay till 2 or 3 in the morning just hanging out with people. And I've had so many late nights.
Just pick one.
A random one.
Pick
that
one.
Had a
We don't
big
need your life
impact-
story.
That had a big impact. It doesn't have to be your favorite.
I'm going to be put on the spot and say all of them.
Oh.
There's too many good ones.
Cop out.
All right, Oz, show them how it's done.
Yeah, man.
So we were sitting waiting for the closing ceremonies a couple years ago. Like all my responsibilities were done because it was the closing ceremonies, and I was sitting, or maybe it was like Iron Painter night, something. I was done for the day, and we were sitting on all the chairs in front of the stage, and 2 guys were talking in front of me, and they turned around when I made a comment to their conversation because I like to do that. To people.
Yep.
And they
Just
were
be like,
talking.
I hear you saying something. Let
Yeah.
me interject.
Yeah. And they were talking about painting and how neither one of them painted their models because they weren't good at it. And I just gave them my opinion of you don't have to be good
Right.
at painting your models because you'll never get better
You interjected someone?
unless you start.
You interjected on a strangers and gave them your opinion out of nowhere?
Sure.
That's
Sure.
never happened, Oz.
Sure. Because, and I've had this conversation with other people at other shows, like, I'm not a good painter. I've been attempting to paint miniatures for, how old am I now? 27 years or something like that? I don't even know. It's been more than half my life. At this point, I've gotten to where I know the techniques I can pull off that make models look okay.
Sure.
And so I had a conversation with these guys about how they didn't want to paint models because they weren't good at painting models and they would rather have their models unpainted than painted badly. And I use myself as an example to say my
go
things are not painted to the highest level. They're not Dallas level paintings.
Sure.
But they're okay. They get the job done and you can get there.
Oz, I have a question, man. That wasn't
You didn't answer a question. You don't get questions.
Oh,
Chick.
man, you got shut down.
You didn't
Just
answer
turn
the
off his
question.
mic. Just turn
You
off his
didn't
mic.
answer the question.
I did answer the
The
question.
question was a development-related chat.
No.
you
No,
know,
no.
something.
It was
he
any
said
moment
favorite
related to the
moment
game or
from-
development.
Yeah, a game related to the game or development.
Yeah, it was-
I thought we were
that
talking
was-
about development.
No,
that
that's
was related
related
to the game.
To War Machine.
I was trying to think of stuff specifically related to our hangouts where people talk to us
No,
about
you
development.
said you love
No.
all of your.
I do love everybody
Like you've
that
made
hangs
the
out.
statement.
You
it's
also
over.
said you hang out till 2 in the morning. You
I
can't
will.
be talking development
right.
at 2 in the
Chick.
morning.
Hit me.
So I think I've been since Lock and Load 1 to Lock and Load now. So the whole thing.
All of us have.
There's been tons, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite though, the one that really stuck with me was we had a class in the first year in the Maiden Bower, so 2014
Yeah.
I think was the first year of the Maiden Bower.
Right about then.
Yeah.
And it was a class that it was a hangout class that we sat down and we talked about the whole process of model creation. Like what is it? How does a model start its journey to how does a model end this journey? And we went through the whole thing and we answered questions and we kind of riffed back and forth. And then at the end of that, we effectively designed the rules for a new model.
yeah.
which translated into another class where you could come back and then with Ed and the creative team, they would concept the new model. And then I think there was an additional one where you could go play test the new model. So it was like this very interconnected. It was like the most cohesive look at the process of how do you get this thing on the shelf that we ever really did. And I thought it was really cool for the people who walked through it because we were able to have a very intelligent and like broad discourse by the end of it, to where, you know, they'd come back and they were like, oh, we did this thing and then we tried this and this didn't work. And to see that light snap on in their eyes and to all of a sudden be able to have a conversation that you can't have without that experience, an experience you can get nowhere else. Like for me, that was the one where I was like, this is the point of Lock and Load. This is why we're here. Not just to celebrate the new stuff coming out and to play games. That's all fun and super awesome. But to actually reveal, you know, these hidden but important truths about why do I like the things I like?
Right.
Why am I compelled to go do this every weekend? And you know, that's really the reason as to why I wanted to Shanghai this whole thing and push it into this conversation today.
Now that I've had time to think about it, my answer is going to
No,
be...
you already answered
No,
it.
he can get a redemption.
What the hell?
I thought your answer was everything.
The answer is
that's
my
ever happened.
answer is still everything, and that's because a lot of people...
Boomer's, turn off his mic.
No.
He's done.
In a
Thank
different-
you, everyone, for joining us.
No. I have a serious answer because we do a lot of charity support, and I have too many stories to tell at one time. And so when I said everything, it kind of actually meant that. We see a lot of people come up to all of us, and we've supported like Wounded Warrior. We've done a lot of the Food Machine. We've done so many different things, and people will come up to us after the fact when we've like signed a book or talked to them or helped them with their event, give them advice, tell them like, we created formats for people to run for their events before, right? And they come up and tell us like how much they raised and all the good stuff the charity did. And like I said, I'm in tabletop gaming because of the importance it has on people and community. And so seeing very direct community results where people get to take a game and do something legitimately good. I can't give any one example because there are too many of them, but that's always my favorite thing.
Cool.
No, that's legit though. So your favorite part of Lock and Load, or really any show that we go to, is the chance for people to share with you a positive impact the game has had on their community or some aspect of their life.
Yeah, anything that people do like that, and especially, and I won't get super deep in it, but we've gotten stories about people that just the act of being part of the hobby has helped them. Like a super fast example is we had somebody who had seizures, who really bad, but they found that when they would focus in and assemble a model using the X-Acto knife, which normally they couldn't have a knife in their hand, but when they were able to use the knife to clean the models and glue everything together, the seizures and the shaking stopped. They never had it. And so stuff like that, where part of what you do for a living has a really positive impact on a community or a single individual, is always going to be the most important for me.
Sure.
And I'll never pick one out because, like I said, literally, it's all those conversations.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're at our hour. So thank you very much for going on this crazy train with me.
It was interesting.
Maybe I'll get to come back in like 4 months after the sting of surprise has worn off. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
So
We've got a couple things to mention. First off, don't forget, join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific for Get Your Paint On with Dallas. Next week, the normal stream will not be happening because we're all going to be at Lock and Load, but we will be live streaming from Lock and Load. So the keynote happens on Friday. Also, pplockandload.com. You can still get tickets if you're coming. If you haven't shown up, if you're local, it's not that far. Come join us and have this conversation with us in person. And last but not least, with 6 days left for the mini crate model, the Pharaoh Valkyrie Warlord. So if you want to get her, she's one of the coolest ones we've made, in my opinion.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome.
Pick her up because we're going to destroy the mold and you're never going to get her again. And now I think we've covered everything.
All right.
Goodbye, everybody.
And there's going to be a bunch of streaming at Lock and Load.
There will be,
all kinds
yes.
of stuff. Not just the keynote.
Yeah, keynote will be the big one.
Yeah,
that
there'll
everyone
be
wants to really see.
games,
There'll be
other
games,
stuff.
of course, yeah.
There'll be chats.
Yeah.
We're doing Primecast Live.
Can you
Yeah,
never
Primecast
say
Live.
flesh cog again?
I'm going to say Flesh Cog all the time.